Welcome to the Marriage Puzzle Podcast with Julie and Thomas Hobby. We are marriage coaches who help couples with pain points about money, intimacy, and communication go from being overwhelmed to being secure in their marriage.
If this is your first time listening to us, thanks for checking out our podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and a review. Let's dive into this episode.
We're back. Yes, if you don't follow us on Facebook and Instagram, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, as we took a break last week from our weekly podcast. We usually release new episodes every Monday. But last week we shared on Facebook and Instagram that we were taking the week off from recording.
Yeah, we broke a 36-week straight streak and took a week off.
Yeah, we were on a spring break road trip. So we live in Florida, and we drove to Georgia and did some exploring in Atlanta. And then we drove to Tennessee and did exploring there and stayed with some family. And we were just really enjoying the family time and needing to be present with our kids. And we're like, you know what? We weren't planning to unplug, honestly. We brought our podcast equipment. Yep. We were ready to be there for you guys. And sorry, family time trumped our marriage audience.
Yeah, we also had a sick kid as well the night that we were planning on recording. And so that really kind of, drove the last nail in. And we just said, you know what, we're just going to pull the plug for a week. And it was great. I mean, it was great for us and our family that we did that. And so, we would just encourage you guys to do that as well when the time comes. Not that, you're all necessarily recording podcasts, but we all know how connected we can be to work these days. And
even on vacations, I think we need to practice what we preach. So, if we're saying be present with your family, support your spouse, and prioritize your marriage, it's kind of like, well, then you really do need to unplug from those devices or creating content or the work mode. Taking that hat off, I think it made us more energized to get back to it this week. So it was fun. And also, if you're not following us on social media, you should be. If you have Facebook or Instagram at Marriage Puzzle, because we don't just talk about the podcast. We, share more of our life and family stories there. And so we also had an announcement that after our miscarriage episode that aired 2 weeks ago, episode 36, we were sharing that we had 2 back-to-back miscarriages, but we're still trying for number 4. And so we announced that we are currently pregnant with one baby.
Yep.
So we've seen baby twice now on ultrasounds and strong heartbeat, and things are looking good. And so I'm officially in my 2nd trimester and feeling it. But we feel really, really blessed to be able to be expecting again and hoping for the best all the way through to delivery in September 2022.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, Julie has been very, very tired during this pregnancy. And as we were getting prepped to record tonight, she said, I want to start recording right away before I get too tired and just fall asleep for the night. So we're recording at night for when you're going to hear it on Monday. And so
we put the kids to bed and then record. But with this pregnancy, I've often had to take a little nap right after the kids go to bed, like a pre-bedtime nap. And I knew if I did that tonight, I wouldn't be able to get up and be energized for this. But I'm excited to be back because a week off, I feel like I know that it's an audio audience, but I miss doing this and showing up for people.
And I just want to say one thing. I mean, like Julie said, 2 weeks ago from the time that this launched, episode 36, we just did an episode around miscarriage. And so this announcement may be hard for some people to hear, and we're not trying to flaunt that in anyone's face or anything. We know that's difficult, and we just pray that anyone who's going through that right now is gonna have success coming out of the other end, and we'll be able to get pregnant soon. And so just hang in there and look at this as a success story and an encouragement that things are possible. So
absolutely, I'm glad you said that, because I just want to be able to share my story to bring hope, because I needed that when I lost hope, honestly, and didn't know if we should keep going. And so I know some of you have reached out directly and said that this is your story, or even you don't have kids yet and you've had miscarriage. And so that just breaks my heart more. And so, yes, it's not a easy journey, but so I never want to even complain about being tired or the pregnancy joys as it takes to grow a baby, but just feeling really blessed, and I want to be a bringer of hope to marriages. And so it's actually why we're doing this podcast series. We kicked it off with miscarriage because our listeners asked for that. But this is another topic that they've asked for. So our series is called Thriving, Not Just Surviving. So it's different topics and things in your marriage that we hope to bring encouragement that you could thrive in your marriage and not just like barely hang on and survive. And so
like major events or big things in your marriage that you have to work through, things like that can be difficult if that really can make it feel like you're just trying to survive. But we want to help bring encouragement in each of these areas that we're going to be talking about in this series to help you get to a thriving point in these areas, and get back to some hope if that's kind of what you're missing out on in some of these scenarios.
Yeah, so to plug social media one more time, we did a poll on our Instagram on the topics that we would cover during this series. And job loss or change was pretty high up there. And so that's what we're going to be talking about with this. So this is episode 37, Thriving, Not Just Surviving, when there's job loss or change in your marriage.
Yeah, and if you do follow us on social media and you're listening to this podcast, help us out and click whatever response on those polls that we post, like and comment on anything that we do. The way Facebook and Instagram work is the more people engage with our posts, the more those algorithms will show to other people. And we're just trying to reach people and help people with our message. And so the more you comment and share and save and like our posts, the more Facebook and Instagram will realize, oh, this is what people want to see, and they'll put it out in front of more people. So just a little shameless plug there to help us out.
It sounds self-serving, but the way that I want to be so humble in this, ministry that we're offering, but yet I want to be bold in talking about that because I think everyone should be for marriages.
Right.
So if you want to help your friends and family and neighbors and strangers or around the world have their marriage thrive, not just survive, or stay together, then that's why we're doing this. And your support and your engagement really helps us reach other marriages.
Totally. So back to this week's episode, Thriving, Not Just Surviving, in Job Loss or Change. So this is a really personal one for us, and really it's kind of a foundational piece to how this podcast came about.
Very true.
I'm going to tell my story about this. Julie also has a story surrounding this, and had those two events not happened in our lives, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast yet. It may have come later down the road in the future, but those two major events really thrust us into the jobs we're in now, the career paths we're in now, and being able to start this podcast.
Yeah, the passion that we had for marriages.
Totally. So let me just try and give you a quick rundown on my story because it's somewhat of a long story, and as is yours, but we'll try and shorten them up so that we can get to why or what we're going to encourage you guys to do to support your spouse in these areas. And so my story came, Julie and I were working together at a church in Colorado, and we were both on staff there. And the leadership brought us together and said, hey, the two of you are essentially running in the same lane. And because of that, you can both stay on staff and have no upward mobility. We'll hire someone to oversee the two of you. Or one of you can leave And if you leave, then, the other one will have kind of take on the responsibilities, of whoever leaves and move on. And so I was... that was a rough conversation, and but I basically,
what do you do in that? That wasn't a win-win,
right?
One of us was gonna lose.
Yeah, or we were both gonna lose if we both stayed on. Really, we were just gonna be stuck. And so so I just said, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna stand in Julie's way from getting a promotion or moving up the ladder, and so I'll gladly step aside and leave. So I did, and in that. Obviously, we lost,
you were out of job.
half of our income, essentially, at that point, 40% of our income, whatever the numbers worked out to be. And I had no job. And so, I had a couple months of an off ramp, to try and start looking for something else. I found another job doing some temp accounting work pretty quickly. So this event happened. I ended my job at the church essentially December 31st, 2020. 2019, going into 2020. Got my new job January, February 2020. And started working at some temp jobs, and then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. And because I do accounting and I was doing temp accounting, that's extra money that companies were paying to have a temp accountant, and they stopped paying temp accountants. They said, well, we'll just figure out some other way to get our accounting done, whether they had a CFO who was going to take on the lower level duties, or, however they were trying to figure it out and just piece it together. They needed to find ways to save money. So I was one of the first places to get cut. So I kind of had 2 job losses back to back almost. And so in doing that, it was a pretty tough time for me. Mm-hmm. And I came to Julie with an idea of, starting a business. And so then that's what I did. And she was really encouraging in that. And so I started the business, and that kind of rolled into some other things, which really eventually turned into, helped turn into this podcast as well. And so,
you became a remote financial coach, mm-hmm. instead of going to an office doing accounting.
Yep.
Which was more behind the scenes. It actually launched you into a passion of helping people, working with people. Yep. And changing their finances and mm-hmm. their life around. And then that kind of, now it turned into marriage coaching as well, remotely. Yeah. So, but that you're making light of a hard situation. Obviously that was
I'm trying to conserve time here so that we don't make this such a long episode of me just droning
just saying that you've experienced job loss kind of twice there. It was in like 90 days, of big transitions that we had to navigate, and we didn't see the end of the story as we do today when we're going through it. So there were hard times. So that was,
sometimes those hurdles can feel like walls, mm-hmm. In the moment. And so that's what it felt like for a little while, is that I was trying to climb over walls instead of jumping over hurdles.
Yeah. And then through that, a year after Thomas went through all that, I personally felt I needed to make a change myself. And so he experienced a job loss. I'm more on the change side of, I initiated it going into 2021. Mm-hmm. And I shared my story on a previous podcast episode way back, if you've listened to all of them or want to binge listen and catch up. But in short, I remember the day still coming home to Thomas and was like saying, I think I want to leave my job. Yeah. And that time he had launched his business, but it wasn't a thriving business like it is today. Right. So it was, I was the breadwinner. We were surviving on that income, and the business was just getting started. Yep. And so it was a really rocky time for me to even be thinking that, and scared that Thomas was gonna be like, you cannot leave. You have to work for our family. But I just felt so strongly it was time. Mm-hmm. It was time to leave the job that I had stayed and was promoted in. But it was a hard year with COVID things and everything. So anyway, long story short, when I came home and told him that, I'll never forget what Thomas said back to me. And he said, "You are not defined by your paycheck." And that was the most freeing moment. And I don't know if you knew it was going to be that profound when you said it.
Of course I did. No, I'm just kidding.
And then ironically, the moment that I let go of what I thought was the peak of my career, I thought I had made it to the top of the top, and I was going to walk away from it and never be that kind of person or bring home that much money ever again. But God just provided when I, let go, and we were on the same page and of the timing and how that works, because like Thomas said, that just launched us into even a cross-country move, because we were in Colorado. We moved back to Florida. And then ironically, I picked up a bunch of different jobs, and I ended up making the most money I've ever made in that same calendar year, in that one calendar year of letting everything go. And I don't say that to brag that I'm some millionaire. It's just like, sometimes you just know, and it's just it was a freeing moment to say, you're not defined by your paycheck. And then I got everything and more back by letting go and having that support of my husband. Now, sometimes you do have to make less money starting out somewhere else to climb up. But my point is, it's not about the paycheck then. So it's not about the money if you're choosing to live a better quality of life for your family, or even who you are as a husband or wife. And I think that was my story of like who I needed to be. I needed a change in my life. And so, yes, provide for your family, but overall, I think passion should outweigh a paycheck.
And just to kind of add in a little bit on your story, yours was kind of a twofold thing. There were some events happening at work that were a little extra stressful from what your job normally was, but then you were also a few months out of a miscarriage. And so kind of the two of those kind of crashing together at the same time really just forced you into a situation of something has to change. There's too many bad memories, too many, and not saying that we ran away from the problems, because we could have dug in our heels and we could have faced it and we could have pushed through, but sometimes your mental health isn't worth that paycheck either. Your emotional health isn't worth that paycheck either. And so sometimes that change, that physical distance, or maybe it's not even a cross-country move, maybe it's a job change to the place next door. And so that may be someone else's story, but all of that kind of crashed together for you around the same time frame. I say you, this is your story, but for us, around the same time frame. And that kind of forced us to be willing to make bigger, more drastic changes, to say, we're going to just flip this whole thing on its head, and why keep doing the same thing over and over again? At some point, beating your head against the wall is going to hurt.
Yeah, we hit a huge reset button, but that took a lot of leap of faith. I'd say up until that point, we were very stable, very routine type of people. And taking that leap of faith has turned into such great opportunities and adventures that I'm a completely different person now than I was a year ago. And I hope for the better. Our marriage is stronger because of how much we've had to support each other through those changes. And so I think when even people took the poll to vote on this, job loss or change topic, and then have even sent us some messages about their specific situation, I think it's like out of the bad parts, it's so hard, and it is when you're in it, but we want to we came up with these 4 areas of how you can support your spouse in that, in hopes that you get to the other side and you see the blessings and the faithfulness if you really are a team and can support each other through the change. Yes, it's hard, but it can be even better if you hang in there.
Yeah, so we've got 4 ways that you can do that here, and we're going to start with number 1, which is embrace. When your spouse comes home and tells you that they lost their job, or in like your situation that they want to leave their job or change to something else, the first thing they need is just an embrace. that can come in a couple ways. It can be a physical just hug, and to show them I'm here to support you. I understand what you're going through. Or you may not understand what you're going through, but you're there for them, because one way or another, whether they are choosing this or whether they are not choosing this, their world and your world really is about to get turned upside down. So an embrace is really just going to show, we are in this together. I am here for you. And then there's the figurative side of that embrace that's just saying, okay, you know what? We're going to lock arms and we're going to do this together. Mm-hmm. If you start falling down, I'm going to pull you up. If I start falling down, you pull me up. And there's just that embrace that shows we're going to move forward in this at the same pace, and whatever it takes, we're going to make it happen. And, we had an episode recently where we had some guests on our podcast talking about this, and the metaphor they used was kind of like walking up a hill, and you each have your own backpack full of your stuff that you're carrying, and sometimes you have to be like, hey, you know what, can you carry a little bit of my stuff and I'll carry a little bit of your stuff. And it was an interesting visual, but really just kind of that figurative embrace to say, we're gonna get up this together.
Absolutely, because I think the natural instinct is like a response that's, what? Like, you got fired, or you're quitting? Like, what? And that just, if you could see me right now, I'm throwing my arms up in the air. My hands are like, what? But that just automatically puts up walls in between, instead of an embrace that's like lovingly pulling you closer to me. It's a totally different reaction. Mm-hmm. It might be harder, but it's what your spouse needs if you can lean into that.
Yeah. And moving on to number 2, that is empathize. And we are going to talk about empathize, because what you need to do is you need to support your spouse. And so that embrace is kind of like almost like a 1A and 1B rather than 1 and 2 here, because you need to embrace your spouse, but then you have to empathize with them. You have to show them your support, because they may be depressed for a little bit. And you're going to need to help to pick up some extra slack. They kind of need that time to recover. Like I said, your world just got turned upside down, and I know that turns the whole thing upside down for both of you, but they're going to feel deflated. If you just lost your job, you're going to feel deflated, and you need your spouse to help pick up your slack. And if you're choosing to leave your job, then, that may be a little bit different. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But in a situation where you lost your job, you're going to, the spouse who is being supportive is going to need to help pick up some extra slack, and try to understand the heaviness that the spouse who's losing their job is feeling and what they're actually going through.
Yeah, I think empathy is hard. But that's what you showed me by saying I wasn't defined by a paycheck. Mm-hmm. I had pretty much made up my mind, although, I knew Thomas could speak into that, but I was so afraid of what he was going to say or think or talk me, out of it, which sometimes you do, which we'll get to, but yet just empathy was just exactly what I needed after that embrace. Mm-hmm. And that was huge, to know that everything was going to be okay and that you supported me.
Yeah. And your spouse, like I said, if they lose their job, they may feel depressed for a little bit, and that's going to be a natural feeling, and I think you have to give them a little space to have those feelings. You don't want them to just suppress that and push it down, but at some point, your spouse, and when they need that kind of nudge again, which leads us into number 3.
3 is empower. So if they are out of work, if they were fired, maybe empower them to do something in this time so that they do feel productive. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're still on the job search, but instead of just crying on the couch or, laying in bed all day, maybe help empower them by a discussion of, can you help out with the groceries, or here's a to-do list as you can feel led. Let's, tackle this project. Or maybe even there'll be a shift if you have kids of what childcare would look like if they're, going to do the school runs and pickups to help, or if you have younger kids at home, maybe you need to take a pause from daycare while they're out of work. Whatever, you can empower them to feel productive will help their spirit. If they're looking to change jobs or start a business or whatever, the next opportunity is you can empower them to take that first step of searching for the next job, so that, they don't just, like I said, stay in bed forever, or taking the first step to start their business. And I think that if I could speak back to your story, when you approached me to take a course because you needed a certification to become a financial coach, and same for our marriage coaching. And that costs money. That's an investment. And I supported that of like, absolutely, I knew this was your passion. So that's a way you can empower them by saying, yeah, go take that course or go back to school or whatever you need to do to have the next, opportunity. This isn't the end of the road.
Sure. And you will know your spouse well enough to know how the best way to empower them is. Maybe that's empowering them with a to-do list of things that they can just check off a list, and they will feel accomplished for the day, and they will feel over the moon from that. Maybe your spouse is motivated by money, and they are, because they don't have an income, they feel useless. So maybe that's saying, hey, why don't you go try DoorDash for a few weeks and just bring in some income? Not from a standpoint of, we desperately need this, get out there and do something. But if that's going to make your spouse feel more productive and like they're contributing, find something easy that they can just jump into just like that and start bringing in a little income. If that's going to make them feel like they're getting back on their feet and feel empowered that they're doing something again. Everyone's always been told, never quit your job before you have the next job lined up, right? It's always easier to find a new job while you currently have a job. So if that's the case and they're searching for another job, maybe doing something like a DoorDash or Uber or something like that you can do will help them to have a job while they're finding their next job. And so that's just another way that you can think of to empower your spouse. And you're going to know your spouse best to know which way to help empower them, to kind of keep them moving.
After empowerment, we think is naturally to encourage. So they're all E's if you haven't noticed, but so just like you said, in some circumstances, you may need to encourage your spouse to stick with it if they want to leave a little while longer, while they line up a next opportunity.
Yeah.
You do have to be smart about that and provide for your family.
Yeah. If your spouse is the entire breadwinner and you're a stay-at-home parent and you don't bring in actual income, and we've talked about that before, that's not saying you're not valuable, so don't get that mixed up. But if you're not truly actually bringing in income, and your spouse is bringing in 100% of your income, you may need to encourage them, hey, why don't you stay until, they may be really frustrated about their job, but hey, we need the money, so why don't you stay until you get the next job lined up, just so we don't have a huge gap. Some of that will depend on your financial situation, your emergency fund that you have lined up, things like that. And so there are some other variables, but overall, you may need to encourage them to stay on certain occasions.
Yeah, but in turn, you need to encourage them that they will find success elsewhere.
Yeah.
So if they've made up their mind, then encourage them, yes, and go through all these things where you're supporting that in the next opportunity. Why they're still sticking it out, because that's going to get really hard. Once you make up your mind to leave somewhere, it's really hard to stay and finish well. So they need your encouragement. But you need to cheer them on and be their biggest cheerleader no matter what, because a lot of their friends and family in these situations, like, they may not understand why you would want to leave a job or why you got fired from a job. And honestly, that spouse may not want to fully talk about it and explain everything and all the details to anyone else. So if you're the one they're coming home to, and you see their emotions and feelings, they may only really have you. And so your reaction and support is what they need to lean on. So be their biggest cheerleader.
Totally. And again, that can look different depending on the situation. If your spouse has lost their job, you're going to be their biggest cheerleader. Like, you're going to get this interview. You should be on the top of the list for this job. Just giving them that encouragement in that way. If your spouse is struggling to stay at their job because they're waiting to find the next job and they don't like going back to work, you need to encourage them that they're doing a good thing for your family. And yes, it's tough. Send them text messages, have the kids draw them pictures, or send them a video that says, thank you for all the work you're doing, mommy, and you're working so hard, things like that. Put a little note in their lunchbox. You can do so many little things to just help get them through one more day until they find that next job. So it can look different depending on the scenario, but you can find ways to keep encouraging your spouse.
Yeah, I think encouragement is huge, because one thing that we really try to work on in our relationship is, I kind of laugh at it sometimes, because we'll go through situations and I'm like, how does that always happen? Like, one of us is really down and one of us is the encourager. And it's not that I'm naturally always the encourager, or that Thomas is naturally an encourager. Mm-hmm. It changes depending on a scenario of situations.
Sure.
But I think what happens is, it's not that we have the ability to always pull the other one up right away. Like you said before, sometimes they just need to be in that moment and give space for their emotions. Mm-hmm. But what we do try not to do is pull the other one down, where we're both then stuck there. So sad things happen, but in most cases we really try to have encouragement in our marriage, so that one can be where they need to be and the other one's like the cheerleader, and then we switch for each other and stuff like that, so that we're not just, well, if they're sad, then I have to be sad, and then we're both depressed and we just stay in this state is not healthy for our family or for each other. So that's why I think encouragement is huge.
Yeah, and a couple other quick things that you can do to encourage them is just make sure you celebrate all wins. So any little win that your spouse has in that job search or something along those lines, or whether they're starting a business or whatever, they get a call back for a job, celebrate it. That could be something simple like a high five. That could be a, have a bowl of ice cream type of night. Just figure out what it is and celebrate everything to keep that positive momentum going. Maybe they're starting a business and they're going to be quitting their job, and they set up their business bank account. That's huge. That's a big step in the right direction. Soon there will be money coming into that business bank account. That's something worth celebrating. So find those wins and make sure you celebrate them, and kind of plant that flag every time and say, good, we're going to keep moving forward from this spot. We're not going backwards anymore. We're going forward from here.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say is, change is hard, but new seasons can be good. And I hope you hear that in our story, and that we're not making light of it is hard to have job loss or change. But embrace those new seasons and stick together and support each other, because change can be good.
Right.
And so if you want someone to walk through this with you, we're here for you. So we love that you listen to our podcast and follow us on social media, because you do that now.
Now you do both.
But we also, as you know, we're financial coaches and marriage coaches. So we can walk through whatever you need with you, no matter where you live. And so we offer a free discovery call. You can check that out at marriagepuzzle.com and schedule a free discovery call with us. That's just over an hour for us to get to know you. You get to know us, and we can kind of talk about financial coaching and or marriage coaching, and how we can help your marriage thrive and not just survive.
Totally. We would love to get the opportunity to talk with you one-on-one. I mean, we love that you're tuning in.
2-on-2.
Yeah, 2-on-2. One couple with another couple. We love that you're tuning into this, but if you just need that extra step, that extra little bit of help, that extra, person to help you through a situation, or couple to help you through a situation, we can definitely do that. So make sure you reach out to us, and don't be afraid to do it. I mean, it's definitely a big step to ask for help, and we know what that's like. We've been on the other side of that, and so we know how hard that can be. But whether the situation is financial or just something marital related, reach out. It doesn't hurt to just send an inquiry. That first call is free. We're not going to charge anything for that, and if it doesn't fit, that's okay. But you took that first step, which could get you going in the right direction.
Absolutely. So as always, we look forward to you joining us next week, or more often, with coaching, where together we'll work on marriage one puzzle piece at a time. See you later.
Have a good one.